Okay, everybody, we are going to get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Paul Lachelier. I'm the founder and the director of Learning Life, and this is the third in 6 dialogues that we're having on the topic. The overarching issue or question that we're asking is, what do families worldwide need to be safe and healthy? So we're gonna start this with a little bit of introduction with a video that one of our interns kindly created along with help from some other interns. So I'm Matthew. I think I've got control. I think I have the video ready, so don't worry about scrambling to get the video.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm just going to share my screen. Hold on a second here. And share my screen. Okay. Okay, so this video basically introduces you, for those of you who are new to this, a little bit of introduction to our family dialogues.
The Family Diplomacy Initiative is a long-term effort to empower families to become involved in international decision-making. There is a lot of distrust in the world. And if we are to, in the long term, look to overcome that violence and distrust that exists between peoples in the world, we have to find common ground between people. And one of the most important common grounds we have is family.
Where the nutritional foods in India are quite cheaper than all the fast foods that we are importing from foreign countries, from other countries. So this is a kind of infusion, of cultural infusion. We can take it as new colonialism.
Give you money in relation of how many children you have. So the poor people are having more and more children in order to have more and more money, and the consequence you have is that we have a lot of poor children in our country.
Every day I see the new cases from the domestic violence, early marriage, forced marriage, and everything like that.
My kids came from different places. Some came with medication, family histories that you wouldn't want to listen to because they would be so upsetting. But my whole goal has been to grow out of your constrictions.
Take the idea of I learned a lot. I learned from even this family diplomacy right from the time when I was following it from the Facebook. It has changed and transformed my life as a refugee. I'm able to learn. So thank you.
Children from Nigeria.
Hi, we are from Mexico.
Marcy, I'm from Brazil.
All right, thank you, Matthew, again for helping to create, or leading the creation of this video, I should say. So I am going to briefly present, and by the way, beside me is Zara, my partner's daughter. So she is busy drawing next to me, but she's going to be listening in. Let me switch us to a brief presentation I'm going to do for those of you who are new to this. I'm going to quickly run through things, and then we are going to launch into open dialogue. I'm excited to have a number of people across the world who are going to be offering their perspectives on the theme of today's dialogue, but I'll get to that in a moment. So for those of you who are new to us, we are an educational nonprofit based in Washington, D.C., founded in 2012. Our mission is to spread learning in everyday life beyond school walls, and to innovate education and citizen engagement outside school walls. And we have 3 programs. One is the Family Diplomacy Initiative, which you're participating in now. 2 is an international mentoring program, and 3 are the Democracy Dinners. but I'm going to focus you a little bit on our family diplomacy initiative, since that's what we're doing now. So our vision broadly is to try to create a more caring and connected world, and to do so by inviting essentially people to become family diplomats, and that these family diplomats will eventually get training to advocate via nonprofits, businesses, and governments for the needs, the concerns, and the aspirations of families worldwide. So our goals are, as I mentioned, more caring, capable, and connected global citizens, but also really empowering families to participate in governance at local to international levels to try to create more responsive governments, governments that are responsive to the needs of families. So we currently do two things with the Family Diplomacy Initiative. These dialogues, and we're doing 6 dialogues total through November, 1 per month. And we also connect through a Facebook group, which many of you are already a part of. So the dialogues are happening from June until November, 1 dialogue per month. Each dialogue is an hour and a half. So this dialogue will end in about an hour and 15 minutes. And as I mentioned, the overarching question that we're asking is, what do families worldwide need to be safe and healthy? So you can see here the topics for each of the dialogues. And today's dialogue is focused on particularly work and economics and how those affect family safety and health. So we did the video introduction. I'm in the process of kind of giving you those details, but about the dialogues and so on. But I want to mention that in preparation for this dialogue, I asked a number of people across the world to chime in on particular issues that we're going to be addressing in this dialogue. And so you will hear different perspectives from people in China or from China, Burundi, Mexico, Egypt, the Philippines, Bangladesh, Italy, the United States, Nepal, and Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, you are all welcome to chime in anytime through the Zoom chat. Because we have a lot to cover in an hour and 15 minutes, essentially. The Zoom chat will be a place where you can share as much as you'd like, and we'd actually really love for you to share via Zoom. Okay, so for today's dialogue, we have a total of 7 or 8 questions or issues that we want to tackle under this broad rubric of how does work and economics affect family safety and health. The first is over, under, and unemployment. And that is that some people, as you're probably well aware, work too much and others work too little. And so we're trying to get a sense from you, from your different vantage points in the world, how common these issues are, and how do you think they affect people's health. Secondly, economic growth. It is generally associated with better health and longevity. In other words, that people live longer when they have more income and there's more wealth in the country. But it also, economic growth comes with more pollution, more processed foods, sedentary lifestyles, and other things that threaten people's health. So we want to figure out how are these issues, as you see them on the ground in your countries, in your communities, how are they affecting you? And the third issue is gender and work. So clearly, men and women oftentimes tend to do different kinds of work. And so we're curious to hear about your views on this, whether there are patterns in the kinds of work that women do and the kinds of work that men do in your community and your country, and what you think about those. Age and work. Are children and the elderly forced or encouraged to work in your country? Generally speaking, the trend is that across the world, we're living longer and longer. So there are more older people, but there's also this issue of whether or not children should be working. So please let us know what's going on in your country and in your community, and what you think the health impacts for family are. Fifth is workplace safety. Some jobs are a lot safer than others. And people have very different kinds of work. So what threats do you see to workplace safety in your community or in your country? The last issues, these should be 7, 8, and 9, are slavery and human trafficking. I imagine you're well aware that slavery is still in existence in the world. And we're wondering if you have seen or heard about it in your country and what you think the consequences are for family health and safety. Work insecurity and instability is something that is experienced across the world. Some people actually argue that that's becoming more of an issue. And so we are wondering how have you experienced that in your own family and in your community and your country? And lastly is an issue I did not post in advance, but I want to put out there because I want to kind of help to broaden our imagination about when we think about work and economics and how this affects our health, and that is the division of labor. So we take for granted that that everybody specializes, right? And there's a certain value to specialization, right? That everybody does certain kinds of work, so we do those things more efficiently. But that also means that, as some sociologists call, we have a dual labor market, where some people get worse work and some people get better work. And the question is, does that have implications for the health of families, right? Some people pick up trash and mine coal in coal mines. Other people are doing this kind of work, international work that gets them connected to people online, and they can do it from the safety of their own home, and sometimes right from the safety of their own bed. So very, very different kinds of work. And the question is, what inequalities in work do you see in your community? And should everybody have two jobs? So one worse job and one better job, so no one gets stuck with just a worse job, okay? So those are the questions that we're asking. I'm going to finish off here with some basic guidelines for our dialogue. The first is, as you might have noticed, we are video recording and photographing this dialogue. So we will be using photos and so on and video to share with the wider world, to encourage people to participate in these dialogues. Second, use the Zoom chat for, please, to introduce yourself. As I mentioned, mention your country, your city, and anything else you'd like to say about yourselves. And please, please, please use the comments in the Zoom chat to ask questions and to make comments. Keep yourself muted when you're not talking so that it doesn't interfere with those people who are talking. Of course, be respectful even when you disagree. And in line with our mission as an organization called Learning Life, seek to learn from others rather than to win an argument. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and we are going to get started. I'm going to put those questions in the chat in a moment, but I'd like to get us started with Marvin, who is joining us from Minnesota, but is actually going to be is from China and is going to be talking a little bit, giving his perspective on the first question that we have, which is on economic growth and the other one. So let me put those in. But Marvin, get us started.
All right, thank you, Paul. So I was raised and grew up in China. Before I got here, I worked in China for 6 years. So from my personal experience and also my understanding about my country, I'm going to share some of my understanding, my views about Chinese employee markets. So generally speaking, if you use 40 hours a week as a standard for workforce, I would say in China, most of the workplace have more than 40 hours work every week. It's only 40 hours for those like government work or those state-owned companies work. They have a 40 hours standard. They do those kind of working hours. But for private companies, especially for those technology companies and restaurant business, their employees work much more than 40 hours. Give you an example. In China, like probably many of them have heard about Alibaba or Tencent. Those are very big technology company in China. They have standard working for called 996. That's the way they work. They work 9 hours every day. It's like not 9 hours, 9 to 9, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day, 12 hours every day, and 6 days a week. That's their working hours regularly for all the Chinese technology companies. And for the restaurant company, they have a 7-15, 7 days a week, 15 hours a day. So that hours are a lot. But here, first, let's go to the technology company. Even though they work like 9-9-6, 9 to 9, 6 days a week, most of their employees want to do that. The reason is they are paid very well. They have seen you work for the technology company for 10 years, you make enough money for your whole family to spend for the whole life. So they pay really well. Most of them after 10 years can be like multi-millionaires. So that's why people want to go into those business, like technology, even though they work long hours, but people compete to get into that kind of business because they pay well and they get a very good benefits. For those people who work for the government or work for the state-owned company, even they only work for like 40 hours a week, like regularly, like here, but they don't get paid well. They may only get paid like, I would say, like 1/4 or even less than those private company or the technology companies. The other thing about the restaurant, my mom used to work for the restaurant. This 7-15, like 7 days a week, 15 hours every day is not common for all the restaurant companies. It's only for some of the famous big restaurants. They were on the news. They call it 7-15 because they do have very big incentives for their employees if they work those hours. They got good income and good benefits. But my mom, when she used to work for the restaurant, she does have to work about 12 hours every day and 30 days a month. If she can do that, if she, for example, she can have like 1 day off according to the contract. But if she work on that day, she'll get double paid for that 1 day work. So my mom, if there's nothing emergency or nothing necessary, she will continue to work because that means more money to her. Also, that period was when I was in college. I went to a private college, which is very expensive. It's not like here, students pay for their own tuition. In China, pretty common for parents to pay for their children to like a college. So my college, the big part of it was paid by my parents, and my parents were kind of struggling to pay for my tuition in China for the private university. That's why my mom had to work those long hours. And for me, my personal experience, when I first finished my college, I worked for a state-owned company, and that is a very big company in China. I only need to work for like 5 days, like 40 hours a week, like 5 days. I have 2 days off. Those are considered very good jobs, but those are only for those students who have very good performance in college, and they can compete with other people to get the position to work for the state-owned company. But the better part is they don't get paid as well as those people who work for the technology companies. But it's enough to like buy a house, to live a life. So that's just my personal experience with Chinese employment system. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Marvin. So we've got, I don't know if Hilaire has joined us from, Burundi. Hilaire, are you there? Hilaire may not be, but if we can go to Ana Espinosa, who and her mom in Mexico, because I think you guys also wanted to talk about kind of economic growth and kind of over and underemployment, or these phenomena of overwork and underwork.
Yes, thank you. Well, for the economic growth, we think that, well, what I am going to say is very common in countries from the global south. So we see that when the economic is growing, mostly improve only in high-class families that live in cities, because if you go outside of the city, you see very poor neighborhoods, And sometimes they are affected by some transnational companies such as Nestle or Coca-Cola. And I would like to explain you an example that happens very well, like 5 months ago. Is Bonafont, a Nestle water purifier that use all the water from a community called Zacatepec, and the inhabitants no longer have water to cover their needs. And also because of this abuse, it caused a socavón. A socavón is an enormous hole in the ground, and this also affects a family that has a house nearby the socavón, because the house fell down in the socavón and they no longer have a house. And another problem of this economic growth is that with new malls or new companies that establish here in my city, Puebla, the prices of some services such as water or gas are increasing, and also the prices of land and the houses. But because in Mexico we have a great inequality, most of the population cannot afford to pay that services or that land, and that affects us a lot. And I think that's it.
Anna, thank you. If you'd like to chime in as we go on these issues, these initial issues of work and economic development and over and underemployment, please raise your hand. You can use if you click on the reactions button, just as I'm doing right now, you can see, you can just basically raise your hand like that, and we'll go in order. So we've got Suzanne and Francois Lachelier, my sister and my dad, joining us from Alexandria, Virginia. And one of them, I think, has a comment or a question.
I had a question that Joseph posted as well. Joseph told us in Alabama, I think you are, Joseph. The question was for Marvin about whether how much the work in those hours that he described, and those really long hours for restaurant workers and factory workers, et cetera, how much of that is driven by their choice to take those really demanding contracts versus people who are doing it out of economic survival because there really is no choice.
Marvin?
Thank you. Yes, I heard that question. I would see it is studied voluntarily. For example, my mom can choose to do some work that's maybe work less hours but paid less. I think she chooses to do that 12 hours work because they do pay well, pay better. There are other, like, for example, if she want to do what is less, I mean, for some lower ending, like lower skilled work, for like cleaning work, or I bet there are less hours work. Like, for example, for the restaurant, they do have part-time worker, like who work only like half day, like 6 hours, they pay less. I mean, like half. I think the longer you work, the more it's more like the employees, they do have the choice of working for certain hours, but that also means less paid.
So is the result that then their children can't go, if they take the less pay, they can't pay for a university or for their kids? Like they lose those hours?
Since my dad doesn't work, so he couldn't work. So our family relied on my mom's income. So she was working more hours. For my dad can help, probably she doesn't have to work she didn't have to work that hard.
Okay, I see.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mark.
Matthew from Virginia, USA.
Yeah, I had a question for Ana Espinosa. I read that indigenous communities in Puebla took over a water bottling plant to use it for the community. And I was wondering if you know about that and like what you think, I guess, is a solution for these big multinational companies coming in and taking all of the water.
I don't know if you were able to hear that because his audio is distorted, but I'll clarify. He's wondering about water privatization and whether or not you have encountered this issue of water companies essentially taking over the local water supply. Yeah, Ana from Mexico.
Yes, we have like a big problem, not only for the water, also from some companies that come from for example, to do some mineral work. But yeah, it's a big issue because, for example, Coca-Cola, that I think their plant is based in Chiapas, have like a strategy so the people do not criticize the way they extract the water from the earth, because in that community in Chiapas, the products of Coca-Cola are cheaper, so the people can consume more and more and more products, and they have like a benefit from it, but it's really like affecting them.
Affecting them because they're drinking more Coca-Cola as opposed to water, and that increases diabetes and obesity and so on.
Yes.
Okay. Joseph from Alabama, USA.
I have a question about the availability of work and in relationship to the salaries. And this is for, I guess, anybody. And so it's availability of work, the salary of the work, and the survival, the work for survival. Are lower wage jobs, is there a stronger necessity to work more hours because the lower level jobs don't pay as much, so people have to work more, as opposed to having, because I think the types of jobs are connected to some community entitlements. You know, if you're working because you want to go out after work and you want to go to the movies and you want to, you know, send your kids to university, that's a different story than having to work to survive, and university, movies, going out to dinner are not even on the table. So, and my thought is those types of job situations cause more stress on a family unit because there is no downtime, there is no choice in being able to do anything that you want to do. You're working because you have to live. You don't get to put your feet up in a movie and take a minute to breathe. You don't get the luxury of not cooking one day because you don't have money to go to a restaurant. So I'm really curious about maybe as we go forward, connecting the available jobs, their salaries, and how that's connected to survival. Is that clear?
Yep. Joseph, did you want to direct that to any particular? We've heard from Marvin, who comes from China, and from Ana, who's in Mexico. Did you want to hear from either of them, or just open that up?
No, I think I think I'd like to hear from both of them. I think Marvin really was, my impression of what Marvin was saying, the work that he was talking is of people who had choice. You know, how about those people that don't have choice? And I'm certain in all of our countries, we have maybe a larger than we'd like to think population of people who cannot make a choice about where they work and how many hours they work, and what they do with their money and how that impacts their families.
Mm-hmm. Marvin, then Ana.
Sure. Thank you, Joseph, for the question, for your insightful views. Yes, I have to tell you, before I finished college, going to a movie theater never been on the table of my family. So it's like something very, very far away from us. We never thought of going to a movie theater to watch a movie. I think for quite a long time, for my family or for the most of Chinese family before the China got really developed, we were just making money to survive, to feed us, to have enough food. So I do think, thanks to the development of the economic development of China, I think that really benefit all Chinese people. Right now, I would say like before 2010, when the Chinese economy was already pretty much developed about 2010, but before that, I think people still were making money to just survive. But right now, after more and more people have better skills, they have a choice of doing different kind of jobs. I think the availability of the jobs are becoming more balanced with the salary, because there are more people are getting better education. They have more skills to do higher level jobs. So for those lower level jobs, it's not that compatible anymore. I mean, it's not too many people. See, people are going different directions. So before, for example, before 2010, for the same job, for the restaurant job, maybe more than 10 people can compete for the one job. But now it's kind of less. Even the restaurant raising their salary for to new employees, because you don't have enough people who work for them, because people are having more choices now. I think, yeah, because the big economy is developing, so people have more choices. And also because Chinese people getting older, and you know that the description of the older society, we don't have in China. The current situation is the government encouraging people to give birth, to have more babies, because the workforce, the young people are not enough for the country's need to go as in the professional world.
Anna?
Yes, I will talk again about transnational companies, but it's because when a transnational company, such, for example, in Audi, because in Puebla we have like this industry, automobilistic industry. Well, when a transnational company such as Audi come to the city, a lot of new employees are created, but these new employees are not for like the people who need it most, because these employees that are created require like a high grade of education, of experience, and also most of the times these companies they have their employees from other countries or from the countries they are from. So in Mexico, we don't have like the opportunity as Mexicans to work in such companies. And also another problem of companies from other countries to come here in Mexico is that the people that have little stores, they are affected because they can compete with some enterprises such as Walmart. So the wage of these people are being affected a lot. And also another problem we have here in Mexico is that most of the people that work, they work in the informal sector. That means that they don't pay like taxes to the government. They don't have like social security. They can go to the hospital, the services that the government offers, because they are not registered in formal sector.
Gotcha. So we have a number of people that have raised their hands, so we're going to get to one after the other. Steve Alt from Maryland, USA.
Yes, I was thinking about Joseph's question, and I put some information in the chat, but I'll just mention that the issue of choice of work or not is perhaps really something that only the one countries or globally the world's top 5% or 1% of income earners can have that sort of choice. My experience certainly in the Americas is that most able adults really have to work to be able to cover their basic cost of living, their children's education, and other things. There's not that much choice about it. Where the choice comes, perhaps, is whether they're self-employed or whether they are working for an employer with the vagaries of hourly wages or some sort of a salary with or without benefits. So it's a challenge, I would say, for the majority of the world's people, particularly the bottom billion, as we call them, those that live in the greatest level of poverty. There's absolutely no choice but to work if they are able to do so. Otherwise, outcomes for individuals and families can be grim. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Elisa Plata, please let us know what city and country you're joining us from. And
can you hear me there?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, my name is Elisa Plata, and I am originally from Mexico, but I am actually in San Diego, California, United States. And well, my story is completely, my family situation is completely different. Even though I am in a country where I believe in, I'm sure there's great opportunities to thrive. I am currently on an immigration process, which actually does not allow me to work. And so this is leading my family into the disadvantage and this privileged category of, surviving through the, I guess, the poorest of the poor. And I see that there's many of people going through processes like this. I just wanted to share that, well, when you place families with the responsibility, you have kids, right? And when you have kids, by law, not only by choice, because obviously we love our family and our kids, but you have to provide shelter, clothing, food on the table. It's almost like you have these responsibilities, but at the same time, you don't have rights. So it's a contradiction in what I believe, what we're living actually here in the United States when it comes to immigration. It's very unfortunate that these legal processes take so long. And in the meanwhile, we are just living on the limbo of pretty much surviving out of the good hands of nonprofit organizations that pretty much provides for us. My daughter, she's an American. She was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but she has to go through this because I am originally from Mexico, who married an American who was irresponsible and never processed my legal documentation. So my point here is just how many of we people that are going through immigration processes are living with pretty much no right to work.
Yeah, Lisa, I really appreciate your perspective, because you're coming to this at a, at an unusual time in your life, and it's it's a perspective I think particularly Americans need to hear. But so thank you. Rosella joining us with her sister from Italy.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I asked my sister to turn off the ventilator because here is still incredibly warm in Italy. I had a question for Marvin actually. He said that usually the wages are so low in China that you cannot afford, I don't know, a cinema or going out for a restaurant. And I was just curious to know how much does it impact actually business of the first sector? Because usually the first sector survive thanks to the normal wage that allow people to actually go outside, to spend money in restaurants, to spend money in cinema and so on. And I had even a second question. What does he think about the constant increase of China in the economy, especially, for example, in the implementation of infrastructure such as Silk and the Silk Road? I know that this had a really high impact on the Asian area, especially for raising living standard and improving even the employment sector. I would like to know what are his thoughts about that and some comment about that.
Marvin?
All right, thank you. Can I call you, how do I say your name? Rosella?
Rosella.
Rosella. Okay, thank you, Rosella. Thank you for the question. So first question, you were mentioning how the first sector, do you mean the business, survive if people cannot afford to go to cinema, right? The second question is, how do I think about the Belt and the Silk Road, the Belt and Road, how they influence the world, okay? So for the first question, what I was talking, like for my family, before I finished my college, like before I finished my college in 2012, before that, we couldn't really afford to go to cinema. And back then, I don't think the movie business, the cinema business hadn't really developed very well. But I have to tell you, after I finished college, after I get a good job, and my parents don't have to help me anymore, the money they made by themselves, and also they have, my mom had like a retirement, and my dad also have a retirement, so they are doing very well economically just for themselves. And for me, I was able to make a very good amount of money too. So going to a movie theater become like a regular thing for us. Like at least once a month, we do go to movie theater, we go to restaurants. But before I finished college, it's not a choice for us. And nowadays, I have to tell you, it's very common for Chinese people to go to cinema like every week. You can see the theater business in China going very well because people are paying a lot of money to watch movies. So more about the development of the economy. I think not because people are all getting more wealthy or wealthier, so they are able to have more choices for life. So for the second question, I do, I do think this is what China is trying to do for the whole world. First, China has a lot of construction companies or those kind of infrastructure building powers. For China, the infrastructure in China has been constantly developed all through this 40 years. Even nowadays, it's like, I would say, if you go to China one day, you will see what I'm talking about now. I do say the infrastructure system there in China actually are, just you have to go there to see. I do feel like I have to say it's the road, the railway, the community, the city building, they are pretty well developed. So I think the reason is because China itself has been developed pretty well, and it has more ability to help the neighbors, like these countries along the road, the Silk Road. So I think that's a balance between Chinese, the construction power or the infrastructure building power. They want to use this kind of ability to help. Also, because it's too much for China, they want to export this kind of power to other countries to have the neighbor country to develop, because they believe if the neighbor country develop better, they can have a better trade relationship with China. It can help both countries to develop better. I think that's the philosophy of the Chinese government, what they are trying to do. Also, they believe if they help those countries may build a better relationship with China.
So I want to pause here for a moment for a couple of things. One is at some point in the dialogue, I'd like to take a photo of everybody. And this is probably a good time to do that because there are a number of you on the line, and we'd like to kind of make sure that you're assembled. If you do have family nearby, that you're assembled together, because we'd love to get. These are supposed to be family dialogues. Of course, not everybody can join with their family, but if you can, it would be great for you to bring them along. In the meantime, I want to mention we're going to be getting to a number of issues, including human trafficking. So I want to mention that that's coming up before we finish this dialogue. And if you have already spoken and no longer wish to speak, if you could put your electronic hand down, that would be great, so I can distinguish between those who want to speak and those who do not want to speak. So if everybody is ready, if you could have your cameras on. Hilaire from Burundi and great Nusrat, I'm going to take quickly a couple of screenshots. And on 3, if you could all smile for me. 1, 2, 3, smile. Awesome. And then let me take another photo again. And if you could have your camera on, if you're willing. 1, 2, 3, smile. Awesome. And let me take one more photo because we have a few more people than usual here. And I will take just one more photo. On 3, if you can smile. 1, 2, 3, smile. Awesome. Fantastic to see a number of families gathered together. Okay, so we have Saif Awad from joining us from Egypt, but actually originally from Jordan.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. I wanted to respond to Joseph. He was talking about a serious issue here in Egypt, actually, that I've been living with, and I work with people with it. The minimum wage or the minimum payment in the month is less than $100. This is the legally paid wage for a regular Egyptian citizen. So basically, it is less than what a person could spend for the basic needs, for their basic needs. So they can't go to a cinema, they can't go to a restaurant, they can't go to anywhere. The minimum wage that can actually live with and have a decent life is something around 200 to 300 $300, which is around 5,000 Egyptian pounds. So yeah, this is a serious issue. I believe it's like a contemporary slavery, since we are talking about slavery. Slavery is used to be, I'll give you food and shelter and you are my slave, you will work for me, whatever I want. This is basically what happens here in Egypt. I'm giving you the minimum wage, the minimum payment to actually live your life, to survive, but not to do anything more. So basically, more people have to work 2, sometimes 3 jobs to support their families. Sometimes all members of the family work just to survive, not to have a decent life or to even have something luxurious like going to a university, where it is in the 21st century should be something, important. So responding to Joseph about his comment, here in Egypt, most people doesn't get paid very well, so they have to work more hours. I personally work like something around 16 to 20 hours a day just to be able to get a good wage or because of the job, and there's no regulations about how many hours. Yes, there is a law says that the minimum working hours per week is 48 hours, but no one looks at it, no matter whatsoever, and everyone just ignores it. No one works less than at least 70 to 80 hours a week, which is a lot. So yeah, what I believe the problem is in Egypt, especially that, too much work and there's too many people that need these kind of jobs. and very little to get paid with. Even if they have, PhDs and masters and BAs, they still get paid a little bit very low regarding how much they need to spend to have a decent life, not a luxurious life. There's also this gap between poor.
Oh, Saif, you're now on mute. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, this is the point that I wanted to state. I believe that there are so many other countries other than Egypt facing this problem, and it uses laborers as slaves actually to fulfill their needs. Basically, something like a workshop or a factory in Egypt could produce a lot of things. Let's say a t-shirt or cloth factory. It produce a lot and with very little cost, just because the labor there is very cheap. And so many countries, so many investors come to Egypt just because there is this difference between the payments. For example, there is, maybe I told you about this company. If you want to work as a customer service agent in the United States or UK, you're gonna get paid something around $5,000 to $6,000. But here in Egypt, you get paid 6,000 to 10,000 Egyptian pounds, which is something around less than $500. So this gap between countries, and especially investors that know that and they use it to make extra money, affect not only this country but other countries, their countries, and the laborers in it. So I don't know if this is a solution or not, but making a worldwide or international or global standard for the minimum wage is something we should start with. This is just an answer for Mr. Joseph. Thank you.
Great, Saif. Thanks for your perspective from Egypt. Begum Burak, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, but from Turkey has been waiting patiently. Go ahead.
Thank you, Begum Burak. Yes, actually, I couldn't listen very carefully the previous talks, but I just want to address some of the questions that you wrote in the chat box, and I want some insights about the Turkish context. And also, I don't want to take your time very much, so let me have a look at the questions. Actually, I was reading the questions.
Sure.
First
And
of
if
all,
you can
in terms
focus,
of the
if you can focus on one or
yes.
two questions, that would be great.
Yes, I'm going to focus only two of them, of course, because I don't have an idea about human trafficking or on other issues, but I don't want to, take much time. So I'm going to focus the first question. Over, under, and unemployment. Some people work too much, others too little. How common are these in your country, and how they affect people's health? Actually, I think this is a problem for many of the countries, because underdeveloped countries. I don't see Turkey as a very underdeveloped country, because Turkey is, I think, among the good countries in the third world countries, but I can say that there's a problem with the employment system. Even if you have very good education, or even if you have graduated from a good university, most of the time you have to know some people, or you have to have some network in order to get a job in a good place. Otherwise, there are many graduates. And lately, Recep Tayyip Erdogan opened lots of state universities in different corners of Anatolia. So millions of students are getting graduated every year as teachers, or they graduate from management school, they graduate from business or other departments. And while we look at consequences of this issue, we can see that there are many people who graduate from universities. So the employers think that, yes, I have plenty of people who are waiting for a job, so they offer the minimum wage. In Turkish, we call it as asgari ücret. it is the minimum wage. So you can be you can graduate from, for example, a management department of a good university, even if you can have an MBA, MA, Master of Arts or something. But if you need money, this means that you, most of the time, you have to accept this minimum wage, because there are many people waiting in the, for finding a job. So this is one of the biggest problems. But if you know someone from a good school, you don't have to know English. You can say that, oh, I know this man in this factory, or I know this man from the government, then it would be very easy for you to find a job. I don't know if things are very similar. I don't think that it's the same way in the United States. Maybe I can hear from some people who live in the United States, if they know someone from government, will it be easy for them to get a good job, even if they don't have any good diploma? I don't think so. I think this is something specific to the developing countries. In terms of the second question, economic growth brings better health. Yes, I think so, but also economic growth can improve the situation of the people who are getting richer. But also, on the other hand, yes, the air is getting more we have more air pollution, or the sea pollution, or the other problems like climate change or other problems. And I think the poor people suffer the most from such problems. Because if you're a rich person, you can go to a very, clean town with fresh air. You can have a great vacation, and you can, have a healthy vacation with your family. But if you are poor, even if the economic growth in the country is getting higher, even if the GDP is getting, is growing, this means that again the rich people will get the benefits of it, because they will spend their money in other countries, in better places. They will get the good medication from good doctors. But if you are not, again, rich, this economic growth will not do anything good to you. Do you see economic growth improving or worsening family health? As I said, this depends on your sociocultural or socioeconomic situation. Even if you have a very good education in Turkey, this doesn't mean that you're going to climb the ladders to a good socioeconomic structure, because, as I said, here it doesn't mean that you can be a good lawyer, but this does not guarantee that you will make very good money. So you have to know some people in Turkey. Things unfortunately are going that way. Just a very personal information about me. For example, I do have a PhD, but I have been unemployed for around 6 years. Sometimes I teach English, sometimes I write papers. I always make research. But in Turkey, I still, try to find some ways to relocate, because this is something related with I think the corrupted form of governments. Because in a country, if you are successful, this means that you can get, a good opportunity. But in Turkey, I think this is not the case. It's about not achievement, but ascription, I think. Thank you for this.
Begum, thank you for your perspective, particularly sharing your own perspective as a PhD who's been in some sense in unstable, kind of insecure work for 6 years. So speaking of, I want to get some perspectives from two people who come from other countries in Asia. And these are Job Bautista in the Philippines, who also wanted to talk about kind of job insecurity, and interestingly enough, about volunteerism and community pantries, in part in response to the pandemic. And then Nusrat Jahan from Bangladesh, who also wants to talk about job insecurity. So Job Bautista, Job Bautista, sorry, from the Philippines first.
Thank you, Paul. So since the global pandemic really hit the Philippines, let's give a context. Compared to other regions in the world, the Asia, especially the Southeast Asia, has been really affected by the pandemic. In fact, in the Philippines, there are 4.4 million who lost their job since last year, and companies really declared bankruptcy, and millions of people were really laid off. So here, it is very lucky, and it is really fortunate that for some people, especially who are working for the local and national government, to have job security compared to those who are not. In fact, others, even those who are working in a well-established company, are also affected. For example, we have the Shangri-La Mall. It's a well-known Chinese hotel, and it also declared bankruptcy in the Philippines. Also, since there are lots of people affected here, there's this so-called the community pantry. So what's in it? What's on this community pantry? Everything in this community pantry, everything you need for your daily life is there. So all you have to do is to go to that specific area, take any what you feel that you need. For example, if you need a bread, if you were really in need of something, you can pick everything. And since the government is really having a hard time supporting its constituents, really all people have really supported each other, such as coming up with this community pantry.
Job, who's supporting those community pantries during the pandemic? Is it the government? Is it nonprofits? Is it wealthy people? Who?
It's actually even those who were poor are also establishing community pantry, because, for example, in my case, I can establish a community pantry in our area. Then those who were wealthy, or even not those who were just have an excess money, can donate something that others can use or consume.
Very interesting. Nusrat from Bangladesh, what's your perspective on kind of job insecurity, if you would?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I just want to say that unemployment is the biggest problem here. So I would say that unemployment and job insecurity are related inextricably. And here, just because of pandemic situation, there are lots of people already lost their job, and it's not only I would say it's not only about our country, but also other countries. As already mentioned, some of them they also face the same situation, and it also affects to our health and safety, because like economies and related to the financial problem, and also we face different kind of problems regarding our health, regarding our safety. So I just want to give an example. One of my neighbors, and who was an ample person, and who had some shops, but because of this pandemic situation, just all shops are closed still now. So yeah, as we know that he's an ample person, so we don't provide any kind of help to them. But fortunately, we came to know that he was suffering some financial problem, also for the problems of food. So I can still recall, like last year, we provided some food and also some help to them. As they're the kind of person now, I would say he's now a middle class family because he can't say that he needs help. Even he can't ask for the help to the people. So like for poor people, they can ask for the help to the people, and also the rich people, they don't need any kind of help. But when it comes to the middle class family, and they couldn't ask for the help to the people. So that is the big problem. And there are some jobs, and they just quit the different, I would say that half of the employees, so they just lost their job. And it really affects to our country and the people. And I have seen on news and television that there are some people, they also committed the suicide. Even the labor works, they couldn't bear the financial resource, and they couldn't pay their cost to feed their families, to feed their children. So yeah, I have seen maybe two or three persons, they even committed suicide. So the situation is really worse here, and still is the same. And just because of high rate of unemployed people, and also the pandemic situation, both situations really create a great problem nowadays.
Nusrat, thank you for your perspective from Bangladesh. So I want to kind of shift the conversation a bit to a couple of issues that we have raised. One is about gender and work, and then the other one is about slavery. So you're going to hear from Rosella Vulcano from Italy, Brenda Rodriguez from Mexico, Bahira Trask from the United States, Sridev from Nepal, and Tennille from Trinidad and Tobago. They're going to be talking about either gender and work or about slavery, human bonding, human trafficking, and so on. I do want to note, Elisa Plata mentioned in the chat, and the chat is absolutely fascinating. I really appreciate all of you contributing to the chat. But Elisa revealed that she was human trafficked. And so we'd love to hear from her as well, a little bit about that if we have the time in the minutes remaining. So Hilaire Iradukunda is joined us from Burundi. He speaks French, so I think I encouraged Hilaire to post to the chat his own perspective. Would be greatly appreciated, and then he may do so in French, and then we'll translate into English. Okay, so to start off with, let's talk about gender and work for a little bit. If Rosella, if you could start us off. Rosella is from Italy.
Yeah, I can continue speaking about what actually the pandemic create. Even in Italy, the pandemic hit mostly the third sector, so restaurant, tourism, so on. And the unemployment rate increased as well, has been increasing during this 1.5 years. But the most affected has been women, and there are different reasons for that, mostly because women have temporarily or casual or part-time jobs. That's been the one that have been actually cut off during this pandemic to just avoid to spend money, or when actually everything was closed. So women has been the first one actually to lose their employment. And the reason for that they have casual or temporary job or part-time jobs, is because in Italy, mostly women have been seen as the one that actually have to take care of the family. It's based, of course, on gender role and culture, even based on the culture that is linked to Christianity, even the main religion here in Italy. So this is why women tend to sacrifice their career to take care of the family, because they have been expected to do that. And for this reason, what is going on right now is the Recovery Fund, that is an initiative developed by the European Union. So it's in Italy, in Germany, even though it's less strong than in Italy, and even other countries, they are creating even new possibilities for a more equal employment labor market. And for instance, in Italy, they are going in these following years to promote equal parental leave. They are going to promote even the creation of a solid childcare network, because we lack of childcare. And of course, accessible and affordable for everyone. And even they're trying to improve the representation of women in leadership roles in politics, that we still not balance the representation of women in politics. And so even in leadership roles in economy, because of course, if women sacrifice their career to search for a part-time to take care of their family, they cannot climb the hierarchical order of career, and so they don't reach the leadership roles. So this is what is going on now in Italy, thanks to the project National Recovery Fund that has been stipulated by Mario Draghi, our premier, and we were gonna just see what is going to come for that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Rosella. Brenda from Mexico.
Hi. We think that it's really common here in Mexico that women have like double work. They have to attend their jobs in office, and then When they arrive to their houses, they have the obligation of attend their families. They have to cook, to help with the children, to clean. But obviously, this situation depends in how strong gender roles are in each home. And men also tend to have a lot of stress when they feel they have to be the financial support of the family, and many times all this pressure ends in different idleness. Apart from the fact that they consider that emotionally they must always be the strong part, no?
Yeah, and well, that's one point. But on the other hand, for a long time here in Mexico, we just had, for example, maternity leaves. This was a problem. Well, we had just maternity leaves and no paternity leaves, and it was a problem because at first we were assuming that just women have these obligations, which is not true. But also here in Mexico and all around the world, there are like a lot of men, single men that have a family and that also need those leaves to attain their families. So they stop having these opportunities, and yeah, we reinforce these gender roles. Here in Mexico now we have a law, a federal labor law that establishes that the obligation of the employer to grant paternity leave of 5 working days with pay to men who work and at the same time have their child when their child born. And these processes also happen to the adoption processes. And well, and to finish our opinion and our opinion, why this is important, because paid parental leaves helps fathers bond with their sons and daughters, and this contributes to the healthy development of the girls and boys, and to this contributes to this relationship between them and reduces maternal depression. And finally it closes like the gap between the gender equality gap. So that was our opinion.
Great. Thank you. Brenda, you're joining with your sister. Is that your sister?
Yes.
Mucho gusto. So we have Bahira Trask, who's going to offer some perspective. For some of you might remember her. She was the speaker expert in our first dialogue on trends in global families. And so we just wanted to, she's joining us from Delaware, but she's a professor at the University of Delaware, and wanted to get her insight based on the dialogue. Bahira?
Welcome, everybody. This has been a fascinating discussion. I tend to read all of this theoretically, and so it's interesting and depressing to hear people's experiences, because this is happening all over the world. I have lots of comments, but I'll just stick to gender for today. And the problem really is that we have now spread an ideology of everybody is equal, men and women. This is good, but it's also very bad, because in most places, especially, this was true before COVID, but it's even more true now in the time of COVID. Women have taken on 2 and 3 jobs at the same time. Even here in America, where middle-class women have equal opportunities in many different ways during COVID, I think in last September, almost 900,000 women left the paid labor force because they had to take care of the children. And so this issue of caretaking has not been dealt with in the dialogue on equality. And we talk only about caretaking and children, but there's also caretaking of ill family members and the elderly. And this is pretty much around the world a completely female-oriented task. And I see this as a huge, huge problem when we're talking about work-family issues.
Matthew, thanks for posting Hilaire's perspective from Burundi here. This is actually echoing to some extent, this chronic unemployment problem when we talk about overwork and underwork in different countries, not to mention gender dynamics in this. It's interesting to hear African perspectives where chronic unemployment is a serious issue for many people. So much appreciate the perspectives from Burundi and Ghana. I want to turn in the few minutes we have remaining, and I'm sorry we don't have a lot of time, to this rather serious issue of slavery or human trafficking. And we have Sridev, who is joining us from Nepal, who would like to explain what the situation is in his country. And then Tennille will be talking about the situation in Trinidad and Tobago. Sridev.
Hello, Mr. Paul.
Yes.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to share some of my experience. There are so many different forms of slavery and human trafficking still existing in Nepal too. As a film writer and producer, generally, I travel to many places and research some cases, which I would like to express in shortly. Actually, in the western, in Nepal, in the western region of Nepal, I've seen many cases like forced labor or bonded labor trafficking to India from Nepal side. Many peoples, including women and minor children too, from the indigenous community or those people who are financially very weak, they are forcefully taken to the different cities of India, especially like Punjab and Gujarat and many other cities by human traffickers to work in agriculture and brick canes, factories, mines and mills, etc., where hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children are forced to work as bonded labor. Suffering as bonded labor, and they are suffering extreme exploitation and abuse. We have seen, in our research, we have seen they are even forced to work when they are ill. They never get leave or rest because they are forced. They are forced to work to, work to pay off a debt which they borrowed from the traffickers. Why it's all happening. The need for cash for daily survival. The need for cash for daily survival forces people to sell their labor in exchange for a loan. Those, because of lack of education, those uneducated people are tricked into working for no pay or very less pay with no control over their debt. Almost almost all money they earn goes to pay off their loan, and often entire families have to work to pay off the debt taken by one of their members. And sometimes the debt can be passed down the generations, and children can be held in debt bondage because of a loan their parents had taken decades ago. And there is this is one a form of slavery for the bonded labor in Nepal, who are taken to the India forcefully to work. And another form, there is another form of slavery and trafficking in Nepal, the attraction of abroad job. People are very attracted to go to the foreign country like Middle East, mostly Middle East and Malaysia from Nepal. Due to the huge problem of unemployment in Nepal, most of the young people want to go abroad to earn, and people borrow money. People borrow money to pay their traffickers for a promised job abroad. But once at their destination, their passports are taken by the traffickers. Passports are taken away from them, and they cannot leave until they pay off the debt of their traffickers. Many Nepalese young men and women are the victims of such cases, working forcefully in different countries of Middle East and Malaysia. Middle East and Malaysia, almost every, the result is almost every day, the dead bodies arrives in Kathmandu airport from the Middle East. Most of men dead by, working hard in outdoor in a very high temperature of Middle East, and many cases of accidents due to the lack of safety measures in working sites, and some cases of suicide also. Suicide due to the homesickness away from their family, anxiety and depression by worrying their loan, which they had taken to go to abroad. And one research also about women, one research shows that most of women working as housemaid in Middle East from Nepal, who are working as a housemaid, they faces most women, they faces sexual harassment, and many of raped by that house owner, or let's say employer. Actually, we have found some cases. We have found some cases. We have found many young women landed with their pregnancy, who were kicked off from the job by their employer after finding them pregnant. So this is the situation, and some of the some female who are landed with their pregnancy, so they committed suicide after coming back to country because of the same and fear of discrimination of their community. So these are the current forms of slavery and human trafficking in Nepal in this modern age. In this modern age of 21st century. So this is a huge problem in Nepal. Actually, and another form, let's express my own experience. Another one, let me express about about a traditional form of bonded labor in Nepal. Actually, in Nepal, bonded labor has existed from hundreds of years. There was a kind of traditional bonded labor system in Nepal, which I saw myself. I saw myself when I was a very young kid. I born actually. Nowadays I'm living in Kathmandu, the capital city of Nepal. But I was born. I born and lived my childhood in Tarai region, in Kapilvastu district. There was a tradition. The tradition was, the rich and wealthy people, let's say upper caste people. Upper caste people used to keep bonded labors in Tarai. In Tarai region, there is an indigenous community called it is called Tharu community. Most of Tharus were very weak by financially and educationally too at that time. And they were very backward by socially, let's say it's politically too. But the people, they even had very problem even for food. Rich and upper caste community used to keep them as bonded labor. The bonded labor, male bonded labor were called halia. It was called halia tradition in Nepal, and female were called kamlari. They had to work hard for all time only for food to feed their children. All family members, even even the minor children had to work for landlord. Their main job was agriculture and animal husbandry. They were not allowed to enter landlord's house and not allowed to touch any member of landlord's family. There used to be another one separate cottage for them to live near animal shade made by the grass and soil. So there used to be other separates. So they were not allowed to enter landlord's house. They were not paid. They had to work hard from early morning to till night just for food, nothing else.
Sridev, thank you for your perspective. What's really interesting is that you're giving us a sense of, just from Nepal, right? Three different forms of, or three different kind of examples of bonded labor or slavery, including, you mentioned, starting from, Nepalese being lured to agricultural labor in India, and then others going into construction in the Middle East. And then this traditional form of bonding in your country. So it's really interesting to hear those three different things. We have just two more people. Unfortunately, we're a little past, and so I thank you for your patience. We're a little past the time we're supposed to end. So I want to finish off with Tennille. And then Elisa Plata, I don't know if you would like to share your own experience of human trafficking, but you would be welcome to do so after Tennille, and then we will, and then I will close off with a couple of thoughts. And I'm sorry, well, actually, Rashmi, we'll let you have the final word, and then I'll make some concluding thoughts. So Tennille, then Elisa, if she's willing to talk, and then Rashmi. So Tennille first.
Thanks, Doc. I'll be super quick. So human trafficking is one of the unspoken issues in Trinidad, but by extension, the Caribbean, because I think our population is small and it brings with it a frightening reality that our children are under attack and that they're being hunted. It happens like every 2 or 3 years. There were a case where they hunted boys like between the ages of 5 and 10. And in 2018, 2019, they were taking girls from the ages of 20 to 30. And the consequences of this is, I think, when they're 20 to 30 years old. And I think one of the consequences of this is that when fathers, they can't protect their children, they feel helpless and emasculated, and the mothers, because that channel where they could nurture is gone, where their mental health is dented in some way. I met this lady a couple of years ago where her son was taken, and she said it's been like 5 or 6 years. She has not heard from him. She doesn't know. And what she said is the uncertainty that grips you because you don't know if your child is alive or it's dead, what they're doing to your child, why they are taken. She says that it's hard to live on your life because it's like you want to go forward, but you're still stuck in the past. For people who can't afford it, they'll migrate and go to other probably English-speaking countries like the US or Canada, or probably to another Caribbean island where they may feel they have family. But it really affects the safety because no one feels as safe. We're a small population. And you're just consistently looking over your shoulder. Am I next? Is my niece next? Is my son next? Because you don't know if they're taking boys, if they're taking girls. And so, yeah, that's the situation.
And Neil, if you could just clarify, people are just abducted without explanation. They're just...
Correct. Yeah, they're just abducted. So there's a point in time, I think about 2 years ago, a girl left to go to work, never came back home. They found her dead though, but that is a strange case where sometimes some people they're found and some people they're not. There was a time when they said the organs are being harvested, but you just don't know, so that's how it.
Yeah, so for those who might not understand, the organs being harvested, it just means that in some cases it sounds like I understood that it was kind of an economic arrangement for people who are desperate. They give a kidney or something like that, but it sounds like you're suggesting they're actually in some cases forced to take some of their to give some of their organs away to other people who are it basically goes on a black market for organs like kidneys, hearts, etc., and so forth.
And sometimes they're forced into like prostitution as well too, depending on the age bracket and physical fitness of the person.
Elisa, did you want to share anything about your own experience?
What do you think is your can I?
Oh, Elisa?
Yes, I do. Can I?
Please do if you can briefly.
Yes. Thank you, Susanna. No problem. I'm sorry. So yes, I wanted to share this because you can hear me well, right?
Yes.
Let me put my video again. I want to share this because I believe it's a very important issue that it's happening not only in poor countries or non-developed countries, third world countries. This is happening in countries like United States of America. In my experience, I come from a middle class from Mexico. I never thought this was going to happen to me. I went to university. I got married, and I was brought into United States after my marriage. As my ex-husband did not file, as I mentioned before, for well, he did file for my residence, but then didn't kept on going with the process. So these made me fall into the cracks of illegal, undocumented person. And being, I came here legally. I came here, always had a visa, but something is happening in the immigration system that people starts falling into this, how can I call it? I don't know, a broken system. And that was my situation. And unfortunately, my ex-husband ended up to being a criminal, which thank God I divorced. And that's what placed me into human trafficking. And it was it's been a very difficult path. I escaped human trafficking, and then I worked illegally, and I went into custody for working illegally in the United States. When it's just I don't know how to place it, because I feel like I get punished for doing the right thing, which is working, and I get abused by being associated with criminals. In this case, once you are placed on the cracks of illegal, undocumented, and then you become associated with crime, then criminals would take advantage of, especially women that are illegal or undocumented. And this is where the extortion comes, the threats of, I'm calling immigration on you if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, and so on. And I unfortunately have seen this as a repetitive pattern, and this is happening here to us women in the United States of America. And this is why I became a journalist and an activist, and now a human rights consultant, out of trying to not just learn in my journey what human rights are, but also try to teach others, especially younger generations. Because in this journey, I unfortunately saw so many young women falling into this. And not only undocumented women, but American young girls that are being threatened by criminal organizations. And it's devastating. It's very sad.
Lisa, thanks for sharing your experience. I think it's super valuable to hear from you, even if we're going above time. We have one more comment from Rashmi Kandara, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but Elisa, I shared my my email in the chat to you. If you could just connect with me, because we'd love to hear more about not just your story, but these other stories of human trafficking and how it affects families. So would be great to kind of continue that later. Rashmi, you've got the last word, and then I'm going to close things off. And please tell us what city and country are you coming from?
I'm from Jodhpur, Rajasthan. Basically, it is a desert area. And if I talk about my personal experiences, then in India, from last 2 years, like then in the pandemic time, especially, we most of the people even lost their jobs. Even if I talk about myself, then I was unemployed that time. Because I was working in the university that time. I have done my PhD. So then I was working on the private basis, not on the permanent basis. So they pay a very negligible amount. It was like the $400. And just imagine, I was working in the university at the post of the assistant professor. But because it was on the contract basis, they paid only $400. It was not enough for me. Then start finding more opportunities to earn better money. Then I start writing the articles and I, start getting the money by writing the articles, and then I helping the other students, PhD students, in their publications work, and then in this way, there were multiple. I can say I was engaged to the multiple activities, and then I get the amount. Because it was really difficult to survive with a less amount. We not able to fulfill our basic needs even in this much of amount. And in India, if we see that, one of the spokesperson from Nepal, he talk about that the casteism. Okay, you talk about the casteism, so I completely agree on it, because I belongs to the lower caste, and it is really difficult for the people who belongs to the lower caste, where you face so many discrimination on the basis of the caste, because you are seen like untouchable. You cannot get the equal opportunities in comparison to the higher caste people. So it was really difficult. The whole journey was too difficult, but finally I succeed, and I have done my PhD and currently working in the university. But yeah, I'm not actually satisfied with the amount which I am getting from the university now. So definitely there is some kind of exploitation, because you are in India, there is a policy, working policy, then you have to work for the 9 hours, 8 to 9 hours. Okay, and we have only holiday on Sunday. So just imagine if you work for 8 to 9 hours every day, and you have only one holiday, that is Sunday, then I think the amount is too less. Because in comparison to the other countries, like I have so many friends in Japan, and in USA also, and in other European countries, they are getting very handsome amount in comparison to me. They are also working in the university, some are doing postdoctorate. So at the postdoctoral position, they are getting more than $4,000, whereas I'm getting only $500 or $400. I think it is exploitation.
Yep. Rashmi,
Yeah.
thank you for your perspective. It speaks to, I as a former professor, and actually my partner here is a professor, and there are a number of people who, Begum spoke, and she spoke of this kind of precarious situation that even people with PhDs find themselves in. It speaks, I think, to the importance of hearing these perspectives, but also hearing how a growing number of people across the world have these very insecure situations, and it's the developing a kind of gig economy, as it's sometimes called in the United States, where people kind of cobble together different jobs in order to make a living. And this has real impacts on family. I appreciate the fact that I think that's your daughter that's patiently kind of participating and listening in. It's nice to see her as well. So I want to close things off because we are way past our time, but I really appreciated those of you who stayed on. I want to mention a couple of things. One is I'm putting in the Zoom chat our Family Diplomacy Initiative. Please, if you're not already a member, join it. It is where we connect people across the world in this Family Diplomacy Initiative. And as a follow-up to this dialogue, I will be posting a recording of this video, of this dialogue, and we will be placing that in the Facebook chat. And that will allow you to continue the conversation there until we have our next dialogue. And so just so you're aware, our next dialogue, and I will share my screen to give you a sense of when the upcoming dialogues are. And we certainly hope that you will participate in the other dialogues coming up. So the next dialogue is on September 12th, and it is focused on the environment and how that affects families and family safety and health. Keep in mind, when we think of the environment, it's everything from housing and all the way to climate change. So it's a variety of things. When you think of your environment, it's your immediate environment. It's not just climate change, but of course we will be dealing with that. And then on October 10th on politics, many of you have mentioned, this has been a recurring theme from people in Africa, from Begum in Turkey, that a lot of the ability of people to get jobs is dependent on their political connections or their social connections. And that's a really important point that we'll be exploring in more depth on October 10th. And then the last dialogue is on November 14th, and that's focused on education and leisure and the ways in which those things in our very unequal world shape family safety and health. So I want to thank you all for your participation in the dialogue. Let me stop sharing my screen. I think I just did. And we hope to see you again in September. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.